Hey guys, my name is Shelby and thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Here we do lots of farm to table recipes, baking, gardening, homesteading, and so much more. In today's video, we'll be making some homemade brown sugar. Most people don't realize it's just two simple ingredients, molasses and regular cane sugar, mixed together to your desired light or dark brown sugar. So I'm gonna show you exactly how we do that, and at the end, I'll be making some heartwarming and classic chocolate chip cookies. Let's get started. So how do we make this? It's just 1 cup of regular cane sugar to 1 tablespoon of molasses. And if you want it to be a little bit lighter or a little bit darker, you can of course add more than a tablespoon or less than a tablespoon, but the tablespoon is kind of like your general starting point. Some people like really dark brown sugar and some people want it on the lighter side. So whatever you decide that you like.
For today's recipe, I'm making 6 cups of brown sugar, so I'm measuring out my sugar first and then grabbing my molasses.
For this recipe, I'm just gonna eye out the 1 tablespoon measurement. I've been baking for quite some time, so I can kind of visually feel out that measurement. And that's the great part about making brown sugar, is that it doesn't have to be exact. It's just how dark do you want it, how light do you want it.
Now it's time to gently add your molasses. You can use a tablespoon measure, a cup measure. I'm just eyeing it out like I said before, and then whisking together.
I'm just gonna kind of scrape the sides because there's definitely some clumps in there, so that everything can get more evenly distributed. Now you don't need a stand mixer for this. You can, just fork it together and fluff it up until everything's nice and mixed, or use like a hand whisk. And of course, just like one of those hand electric mixers, whiskers as well will work. Use whatever you've got. This is a pretty simple kind of recipe to just make it work to your liking. So we are all done with whipping together this brown sugar. To me, this is exactly the kind of darkness that I like. I like it to be like a really deep caramel color, not too light and not too kind of on the dark side. So this is really good. I'm really pleased with the outcome. And like I said before, this will last for 6 months, a year. Basically, the nicer of a container that you keep it in, the longer it's going to last. I'm ready to make my double batch of chocolate chip cookies. I like to make a bunch of chocolate chip cookies, or just cookies in general, at one time, and freeze the cookie dough into portions. This makes it so that we can enjoy fresh baked cookies whenever we feel like it, without the hassle of actually making the cookies. So I'm going to show you exactly how I make the cookies and I freeze all of that dough. So what you'll want to do first is whip together your butter, your sugar, and your eggs until it's nicely combined and fluffy, and then you'll slowly add in your dry ingredients and mix basically until it's just mixed. First, we're going to add 4 sticks of butter, because remember, I'm doubling this recipe. I'm just doing the Nestle Tollhouse chocolate chip cookie recipe. It's just this nostalgic, perfect recipe to me. And you just can't go wrong. You really can't go wrong with it. I absolutely love having just way too much cookie dough on hand in the freezer, ready to enjoy. If you have somebody over, you go, hey, do you want some fresh baked cookies? I can just pull them out of the freezer and have them done in like literally 10 minutes. So that's why I like to make a whole bulk amount of cookie dough at one time, because it just makes everything more fun when you want to just enjoy a little guilty pleasure.
So first you'll want to add your butter and then your granulated sugar, and of course add your brown sugar that you just made from scratch at home. Never have to worry about running out of brown sugar again. Mix thoroughly till nice and fluffy, scrape the sides, and then you're going to add 1 egg at a time. It's kind of hard to see here, but I am adding the eggs, and then my vanilla extract. Next, I'm adding my dry ingredients to a separate bowl, so adding my flour, then my baking soda and salt, and whisking everything together until nicely combined.
Now what's left is to add all of the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients, very gently mix it together, and then my favorite part is add the chocolate chips in.
Because this is a double recipe, it's going to almost overfill the mixer, so I'm adding half the flour in there, then gently pulsing it so that we don't create a flour mess in the kitchen, and then the other half, and then again gently pulsing to mix everything thoroughly. Toss in your chocolate chips and mix just till combined. I don't know about you, but making cookie dough brings me back to being a little kid and licking the spoon my grandma would give me.
This is all done. Every time I make this, I just think, why don't I make this more often? It's so easy. Now it's time to bake off some cookies and freeze some cookies as well. I prefer to use the size 20 little ice cream scooper or cookie scooper. This has always been a really good size. I definitely suggest using a scooper so that you can have a uniform look, but more than just the look, you'll have a uniform bake. You won't have some that are kind of bigger or smaller and bake unevenly.
First, we're going to work on freezing the dough. So line a sheet pan with parchment paper. Scoop out your cookie dough side by side. It's okay if they're touching because they're going to be frozen later. You want to try to fit as many on the sheet pan as possible.
I put 8 cookies in the oven, and this made, I think it was 38 extra cookies for the double batch. So about, 40 cookies depending on how heavy that you're scooping. So I'm gonna put these in the freezer for about an hour. Once they're kind of hard to the touch, they're ready to take out, and I can package them for the long-term storage in the freezer.
Once the cookie dough is easy to handle, toss them all in a bag. I don't even make it neat. I just toss them in there and it's no problem. They'll last for up to 2 months in the freezer in a freezer-safe Ziploc bag. Now to bake them off, I scoop them in an offset form, so 3 and then 2 and then 3. That way they don't touch when they're baking. Then I get my hand a little bit wet and I tap the tops so that they're a little bit squished and ready to bake uniformly.
I've been baking them for about 8 minutes. I like the cookies a little bit underbaked, so at about 8 minutes I start to really check on them to make sure they're not getting too cooked. These still need about 1 minute. It's been a minute. I'm gonna pull these out. Okay, see, they look still a little bit, just a teensy bit underdone. You don't want them to look done on the actual sheet pan. That's kind of the trick. Just a teensy bit underdone so that it's nice and moist still, and it's a little bit chewy. Unless you like, a nice dry kind of like cracker cookie. Personally, I like them nice and chewy. The reason I like to slide the parchment paper or foil, if you're using foil, off of the sheet pan immediately following baking is because I don't want that sheet pan to continue to bake the cookies. That's why I always like to use parchment paper or something like that. If you're making the cookies straight on the sheet pan, it's gonna be a little bit harder to get them off. And the longer that they're sitting on that super hot sheet pan that's at 375 degrees, the more that they're gonna continue to get cooked. So I like to just immediately pick it up, slide it off so that it can start to cool down and be perfect. Our warm chocolate chip cookies are all done and out of the oven. I just like to bake off a few now at a time whenever we feel like having chocolate chip cookies. Baking the frozen cookie dough rounds, how do you do that? Just take them out of the freezer, allow them to get to kind of like a room temperature before baking them, and then just bake them the same as you would with making them fresh at 375 for about 8 to 9 minutes. Just keep an eye on them, but make sure that you just get them a little bit room temperature and they're good to go. These are ready to taste. I'm sure they're gonna be good. Let's give it a try. Just as good as I remembered. Just absolutely delicious, loaded with chocolate, nice and like a little bit crunchy on the outside, but very tender on the middle, which is like the perfect cookie to me. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time.